In its heyday, Konami stood as one of the most iconic companies in gaming history, deeply embedded in the memories of anyone who grew up during the 90s and early 2000s. Konami didn't just deliver countless games, it created some of the most celebrated franchises ever, including Castlevania, Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, and many more. Regardless of which console you played on or your gaming preferences, chances are you've encountered at least one of Konami's titles, and if you're anything like me, you've likely experienced quite a few of them. This company has undoubtedly given us endless memories. However, as most know, the landscape has changed in recent years. Konami has shifted from developing major titles, now focusing more on mobile games, casino machines, and even fitness centers. For many players, it's clear that the Konami they once knew simply isn't the same. Konami was founded in 1969, initially as a music and slot machine repair company. It wasn't until 1978, almost a decade later, that Konami ventured into the world of video games. Early on, their titles didn't make much of an impact, but in 1981, Konami gained traction with the success of Super Cobra and the now legendary Frogger, which became a cultural icon and spawned numerous sequels over the years. Konami then expanded into developing games for the MS computer system, creating some of its most iconic franchises like Contra, Gradius, Track and Field, and Castlevania. These series earned a strong reputation, establishing Konami as a top developer of the time, and its popularity only grew as these games won players over. This era also saw the creation of the now famous Konami Code, one of the most recognized cheat codes ever. Developed by Kazuhisa Hashimoto, the code was initially a debugging tool, providing players with a full arsenal to test game levels quickly. Over time, it found its way into more than 100 games, both within and outside of Konami titles, appearing even in Borderlands 2 and Rocket League. The code became so influential that it appears on toys, merchandise, and even on the Bank of Canada's website, showing how deeply Konami's legacy permeates pop culture. In the late 80s, Konami experienced a major boom. The success of its NES and arcade games fueled incredible growth, with profits skyrocketing from $10 million in 1987 to $300 million by 1991. With the launch of new systems like the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and various arcade machines, Konami released sequels to fan favorites like Super Castlevania, Contra 3, and Gradius. Their arcade games, often based on animated series like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons, became a cherished part of many childhoods, enhancing Konami's popularity even further. But it was in the PlayStation era that Konami truly ascended to legendary status. The PlayStation 1 marked a pivotal period with releases that not only defined Konami's success, but transformed the industry itself. Koji Igarashi's Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, despite being a 2D game, became one of the system's greatest treasures. Konami also struck gold with Silent Hill, a groundbreaking franchise that many still see as the pinnacle of horror gaming. And of course, Hideo Kojima made his name with Metal Gear Solid, propelling Konami into a new era of influence. During this golden age, Konami also branched out beyond consoles with the launch of Dance Dance Revolution, a cultural phenomenon in its own right. With the launch of the card game Yu-Gi-Oh!, Konami's fortune only grew, and as the next generation of consoles arrived, the company's dominance seemed set to continue. They maintained their rhythm with Castlevania titles for the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo handhelds, which remained hugely popular. Silent Hill gained even more acclaim with its second and third installments, especially with Silent Hill 2, which was widely praised. Meanwhile, Metal Gear Solid became indispensable for Konami, leading its creator, Hideo Kojima, to be promoted to Vice President of Digital Entertainment at the company. At this point, Konami seemed to be on a steady path to continued success. However, with the era of the Wii, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, cracks began to show in Konami's foundation. Metal Gear Solid continued to thrive, but other franchises saw a downturn. Team Silent, the original developers of Silent Hill, was disbanded, and the series was handed over to Western studios, resulting in games like Homecoming and Downpour, which many felt didn't live up to the franchise's legacy. A similar fate befell Castlevania. After a run of well-received titles in the previous generation, the series tried to reinvent itself with Lords of Shadow, a game that initially found some success. However, its sequel fell short, essentially bringing the franchise to an end. With two of its cornerstone series faltering, Konami was left with only Metal Gear and Pro Evolution Soccer to sustain it. While these titles remained popular, they couldn't fully support the company's financial needs, and Konami's profits began to plummet. This financial strain led to a series of decisions that would later cause resentment among gamers. Most are familiar with the high-profile fallout between Konami and Hideo Kojima a few years back, marked by the removal of his name from Metal Gear Solid promotions, the cancellation of Silent Hills, and reports of poor treatment of Konami employees. This marked the start of Konami's reputation unraveling. To understand how Konami reached this low point, we need to look at the mid-2000s when mobile gaming exploded in Japan. Companies like Disney and others were leveraging free-to-play models, which proved highly successful, leading Japanese gamers to favor free mobile games over expensive console games. By 2010, Konami decided to tap into this market, and within months, they hit a goldmine. Their first mobile titles, Dragon Collection and Sengoku Collection, boosted the company's profits by nearly 80%, a significant recovery after years of decline. With 9 million unique users, most of whom spent money on microtransactions, these games brought in millions, which was especially remarkable given that other Japanese developers like Sega and Capcom were losing money in this period. The games themselves were incredibly cheap to produce, costing only a fraction of what they generated in profits. With this, developing high-budget titles for major consoles started to look less appealing to Konami. Metal Gear, its flagship franchise, wasn't something that could be released frequently, while Pro Evolution Soccer was losing ground each year to competitors like FIFA. From Konami's perspective, the choice was clear: sharply scale back on big console games and shift focus to mobile as the main driver of future profits. Meanwhile, Hideo Kojima and his team were at work on the ambitious Fox engine, a tool that would allow them to create the most expansive Metal Gear game yet. But the project was still 4 years and $80 million away from completion. In every way, Konami and Kojima were on diverging paths, and this is where the real conflict began. Kojima had long been seen as a powerful figure within Konami, making substantial decisions and to some even running things behind the scenes. So what happened next came as a shock to many. On August 30th, 2012, Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes was announced, later revealed to be a prelude to a larger game, The Phantom Pain. From the start, fans found it strange that these two were being released separately since Ground Zeroes was essentially just an introduction to The Phantom Pain. Rumors began circulating that Konami had pressured Kojima to split them up in order to start recouping some of the massive expenses the project had incurred, which isn't hard to believe given that Metal Gear Solid 5 took over 4 years and a huge budget to complete. During this same period, Kojima was handed yet another major franchise, Silent Hill, taking many by surprise. With a new game engine, 2 Metal Gear projects, and a supposed revival of Silent Hill, Kojima seemed to be at the helm of Konami's biggest ventures, or so it appeared. A year after Ground Zeroes launched, Kojima's name began disappearing from all Metal Gear advertising, from the upcoming Phantom Pain to re-releases of the series' back catalogue. Konami seemed determined to erase Kojima from Metal Gear, a franchise he dedicated much of his career to. Worse yet, there was no formal announcement. It wasn't gradual. One day, Kojima's name was there, and the next, it was gone. Just weeks before his name was scrubbed, Kojima was also removed from his role as executive vice president. Kojima's departure didn't just impact him. His newly established studio, Kojima Productions Los Angeles, was rebranded as Konami Los Angeles, and many of his team members were laid off. These events marked the end of any remaining goodwill players held toward the company. After years of delivering some of the industry's most iconic series, Konami went from a beloved developer to one of the most criticized almost overnight. The breaking point came with the cancellation of another major Kojima-led project, Silent Hills. Not only was the title scrapped, but even the demo, which had captivated countless players, was pulled from stores. Just as fans were hopeful that Silent Hill would return to its former glory, Konami's direction took an unexpected turn, leaving players stunned. Yet by this time, Konami had already made its decision, a choice that, however disappointing it seemed to fans, ultimately proved profitable. Over the last 5 years, Konami has seen steady growth, with 2018 and 2019 marking some of its most successful years in decades. Whether fans like it or not, Konami is financially thriving. Their mobile games such as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and new monetization strategies in Pro Evolution Soccer have been lucrative. Many of Konami's famous franchises, including Metal Gear, have been adapted into slot machines, with even iconic cinematic moments reanimated in high quality for these devices. Meanwhile, Silent Hill remains dormant, adding to fans' frustration and disappointment. Beyond gaming, Konami has entered the fitness industry with Konami Sports Club, a chain of gyms and recreational centers that has gained popularity in Japan. They've even developed their own line of exercise equipment, expanding their brand into new and profitable markets. Contrary to popular belief, Konami hasn't shifted entirely away from gaming. Though sports ventures and pachinko machines have gained visibility, their core focus remains digital entertainment, which is still their primary income stream. However, the nature of the games they're releasing today simply isn't what longtime fans crave. To understand Konami's changes, it's important to remember that the company has always been family-operated. Masaki Kozuki, who co-founded Konami in 1969, served as CEO and president for decades, maintaining a close, trusting relationship with Kojima. However, as Kojima's projects began to escalate in cost, other board members grew dissatisfied. This led to Kozuki stepping down after nearly 40 years, with his son, Takuya Kozuki, taking over as president. The Digital Entertainment Division, which oversees video games, then came under the leadership of Hideki Hayakawa, who would spearhead the company's shift in direction. With Hayakawa at the helm, Konami embraced a new structure and vision centered on mobile gaming, marking a significant evolution in their strategy. In Hayakawa's own words, "Our primary platform will be mobile. We want our games to go beyond simply selling in-game items and instead focus on offering features. We've noticed that even players who buy physical copies are willing to purchase additional content, and this has driven us to focus our series on mobile devices. Though our games are available across many platforms, the one that remains closest to us is mobile. Mobile gaming is the future." Konami's new direction emphasizes a unified approach, aiming to bring series like Metal Gear Solid and Pro Evolution Soccer into the mobile sphere with rumors have surfaced about a potential Silent Hill traditional divisions in gaming are obsolete, asserting that mobile will become the dominant platform in the industry. Realistically, it's just speculation at this point and feels unlikely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but given the context here, it's best to stay clear of unverified stories. Trust me, no one would be happier than I would to see Silent Hill make a comeback in the way we all hope for.